Hello, welcome to Blacktop Files. Tonight we bring you a set of cases from firefighters who learned that not every call ends when the flames go out, and that some smoke never really clears. Blacktop Files is a collection of long-form horror stories that feel like true accounts from across the United States. Tonight, we're focusing on fire departments scattered throughout the Appalachian region. Small volunteer stations, county departments spread thin across mountain territories, and crews who know every hollow and back road in their coverage area. These are men who respond to structure fires in century-old homes, brush fires that climb ridges faster than anyone can run, and medical calls on dirt roads that don't appear on any map. They're trained to handle the worst a shift can throw at them. But the cases we've gathered tonight share a pattern that no training manual addresses. Situations where the routine nature of the job collides with something that doesn't follow any known protocol, and where the landscape itself seems to hold onto events long after the paperwork is filed. If you want more horror that feels uncomfortably real, make sure to subscribe to Blacktop Files. Turn on notifications so you never miss a file, and tell us in the comments where you're listening from tonight, whether that's a city, a small town, or somewhere off the main road. Let's start with a call that seemed like a standard mutual aid response, until the crew realized they couldn't account for everyone who'd been inside. I've been with the volunteer department in my county for going on 14 years now. It's a small station, covers about 60 square miles of mountain territory, most of it forest and old homesteads, connected by state routes that haven't been repaved since the 80s. We run maybe 200 calls a year, brush fires in the dry months, structure fires in the winter when people overload their wood stoves, vehicle accidents on the switchbacks, and a steady rotation of medical assists for folks who live too far out for the ambulance service to reach in under 20 minutes. The call I'm going to describe happened in late October, 6 years back. It was a Saturday night, just after 9. I was at home when the pager went off. Structure fire, mutual aid requested, neighboring county. The address given was a rural route number I didn't recognize, but the dispatcher noted it was an old 2-story farmhouse fully involved, and that their department was undermanned that night due to another call on the opposite end of their coverage area. I got to our station in about 10 minutes. 3 others had already arrived. Our captain was there, along with 2 younger guys who joined the department within the last year. We suited up, took one of our engines, and headed east. The drive was around 25 minutes, winding through hills and patches of hardwood forest that were just starting to turn. Dispatch kept us updated. The homeowner had called it in, said he'd gotten out safely. No other occupants reported. The neighboring department's first engine was on scene and setting up, but the fire had already punched through the roof. When we arrived, the scene was what you'd expect. The house sat back from the road, maybe 200 feet, connected by a gravel driveway that curved through a stretch of overgrown field. It was an old place, white clapboard siding that was almost entirely black now. Windows blown out, flames coming through the roof on the left side. The other department's engine was positioned in the driveway, crew already running an interior attack line through the front door. Their captain waved us in, told us to set up a secondary line and cover the back of the structure in case the fire spread that direction. We pulled our engine around to the right side of the property, laid out our line, and I went in with one of the younger guys to do a primary search of the ground floor's rear rooms while our captain and the other firefighter maintained the line. The smoke was thick, heat rolling down from the ceiling, but the flames hadn't reached the back of the house yet. Visibility was near zero. We moved through what looked like a kitchen, then a small pantry, then a back hallway that led to a rear door. We checked every corner, every closet. Nothing. No victims. No hot spots we couldn't handle. We radioed that the ground floor rear was clear and made our way back outside to help with ventilation. The fire was under control within about 40 minutes. The roof on the left side had collapsed into the second floor, but the rest of the structure was still standing, though heavily damaged. The homeowner, a man in his 60s, standing out by the road in a jacket and boots, confirmed again that he'd been alone in the house, that he'd been in the kitchen when he smelled smoke and saw flames coming from the living room. He said he'd gotten out through the back door and called 911 from his truck. We were packing up our gear, doing overhaul, checking for remaining hotspots in the debris, when one of the guys from the other department came around from the front of the house and asked our captain if we'd found anyone in the back rooms during our primary search. Our captain said no, all clear. The other firefighter nodded but looked uneasy. He said they'd found something in the front hallway during their search. Boot prints in the ash leading from the base of the stairs up toward the second floor, but not coming back down. He said the prints were recent, made after the fire had started, because they were pressed into ash that had already fallen. Their captain wanted to do a secondary search of the second floor, or what was left of it, to make sure no one had been upstairs. That didn't make sense. The homeowner had said he was alone, but boot prints don't make themselves. Our captain agreed to send 2 of us back in with their crew for the secondary search. I went back in with the younger guy who'd been with me during the primary search, along with 2 from the other department. We went up the stairs carefully. Most of the steps were still intact, but the railings were gone and the heat had warped the wood. The second floor hallway was open to the sky in places where the roof had collapsed. There were 3 rooms, 2 small bedrooms on the left and a larger bedroom on the right that had sustained the most damage. We split up. I took the right bedroom with one of the other department's guys. The floor was unstable, covered in debris, insulation, charred roofing. We swept the room, checked under the collapsed sections, looked in what remained of a closet. Nothing. We regrouped in the hallway. The other 2 had checked the left bedrooms. Also nothing. But then the guy I'd been searching with pointed to the floor at the top of the stairs. There, in the ash, were the boot prints. They were clear, distinct, and they led from the top of the stairs down the hallway toward the larger bedroom we'd just searched. He knelt down and looked at them for a moment, then looked back at me. He said the prints were too uniform, the tread too clean. They didn't look like fire boots. They looked like work boots, maybe hiking boots, something with a shallow tread. I looked at my own boots. Heavy treads, deep lugs. Same with everyone else's. These prints were different. The other department's captain came up to see. He stood there for a while, just looking, then asked the homeowner again, over the radio since the man was still standing out by the road, if anyone else had been in the house. The homeowner said no. No family, no friends, no workers. He lived alone. We photographed the prints, documented them in our reports, and cleared the scene. The fire marshal came out 2 days later to do the investigation. The cause was determined to be electrical, likely faulty wiring in the living room wall. The report noted the boot prints, but offered no explanation. No evidence of forced entry. No signs of accelerants or foul play. The homeowner stuck to his story. I never found out who made those prints. None of us did. But I think about it more than I should. The timing doesn't work. The prints were made after the fire had started, after ash had fallen, which means someone walked up those stairs while the house was burning. But no one came down. We searched every room, every collapsed section, every space large enough to hold a person. Nothing. The homeowner sold the property about 8 months later and moved south to stay with family. I heard from someone in the other department that he wouldn't talk about the fire, wouldn't even drive past the lot. They tore down what was left of the house the following spring. The land is still empty as far as I know. I don't take mutual aid calls in that county anymore if I can avoid it. It's not that I'm afraid exactly. It's that I don't have an answer that makes sense, and I don't like working a scene when I know something was missed, even if I can't say what. The next file comes from a captain whose department covers a stretch of state forest where brush fires are common, but where he learned that some fires burn in patterns that no wind or fuel load can explain. I've been a captain with my department for 11 years, volunteer firefighter for 19. We're a small rural station, cover about 70 square miles. A lot of it state forest land and old logging roads that aren't maintained anymore. Brush fires are part of the job here, especially in late summer and early fall when the undergrowth dries out. Most of them start from lightning strikes or careless campers. We get called out, contain them, mop up, and file the report. Routine. What I'm going to describe happened over the course of 3 weeks in September 4 years ago. It started with a call for a small brush fire in the northern section of our coverage area, about 8 miles off the main state route, accessible only by a Forest Service road that's mostly gravel and ruts. The call came in around noon on a Thursday. A hunter had spotted smoke and called it in. Dispatch estimated the fire at less than an acre. Slow moving, no structures threatened. We responded with 1 engine and 4 personnel. I drove. The Forest Service road took about 20 minutes to navigate, and by the time we got there, the fire had spread to maybe 2 acres, burning through dry leaf litter and underbrush in a mixed hardwood section. Nothing unusual. We established a perimeter, cut a line, and had it contained within 2 hours. No hotspots, no complications. We flagged the coordinates and filed the report, noting the probable cause as a lightning strike from a storm that had passed through 2 days earlier. The second fire happened exactly 1 week later, same day of the week, Thursday around noon. Different location, but not far, maybe 3 miles south of the first. Say, deeper into the forest. Another call from a hunter. Same size, same behavior, same conditions. We responded, contained it, mopped up. I noted in the report that 2 fires in the same general area within a week was unusual but not unheard of. Dry conditions, storm activity, possible embers from the first fire that had smoldered and reignited, though that last part seemed unlikely, given the distance and the time gap. The third fire happened the following Thursday, again around noon. This one was roughly halfway between the first 2 sites, maybe 2.5 miles from each. Same size when we arrived, same rate of spread, same fuel type. Another hunter called it in. By this point, I was uneasy. 3 fires, all on Thursdays, all around the same time of day, all within a 5-mile radius of each other. I contacted the State Forestry Division and requested an investigator. They sent someone out the following Monday. He walked the sites with me, took samples, checked for accelerants, looked at weather data and lightning strike records. His conclusion was inconclusive. No evidence of human activity, no footprints, no trash, no signs of camps or vehicles, no chemical traces. The lightning data showed possible strikes in the area, but nothing that correlated perfectly with the timing or locations. He told me to keep an eye out and report any additional fires immediately. The fourth fire happened that Thursday. Same time, same radius. This one was almost equidistant from the previous three. Forming what I realized, when I mapped it out that night, was a rough diamond shape. I stood in my kitchen with a topographic map spread out on the table and marked each site with a pen. 4 points. The shape wasn't perfect, but it was close enough to bother me. I called the investigator and told him. He asked if I'd checked for any old structures, abandoned cabins, historical sites, anything that might explain a pattern. I told him I'd hiked parts of that forest since I was a kid, that there was nothing out there but trees and rocks and the occasional deer stand. He said he'd come back out, but in the meantime, I should consider the possibility that someone was setting these fires deliberately, using a timer or some kind of delayed ignition device. The fifth fire happened the next Thursday. Same time. This one was inside the diamond, almost dead center. We contained it, same as the others, but I stayed behind after the crew left. I wanted to look at the burn pattern up close, see if there was anything we'd missed. The fire had started in a small clearing, no more than 20 feet across, where the canopy opened up and the ground was mostly bare dirt and scattered leaves. The burn pattern radiated out evenly from the center, which is what you'd expect. But in the center of the clearing, there was a patch of ground, maybe 3 feet in diameter, where the fire hadn't burned at all. The leaves there were untouched. Dry, brown, perfect, kindling but not even singed. I knelt down and looked at it. The perimeter of the unburned patch was sharp, almost like a circle drawn with a compass. I touched the leaves. They crumbled in my hand, dry as everything else around them. I checked for moisture, some kind of barrier, a rock underneath. Nothing. Just dirt and leaves, same as everywhere else. I took photos, bagged a sample of the soil, and left. The sixth fire happened the following Thursday. This time it was back outside the diamond to the east, extending the pattern. I didn't go out with the crew for this one. I was at the station, staring at the map, trying to understand what I was looking at. The investigator had sent his report earlier that week. No accelerants, no evidence of human activity, no explanation for the timing or placement. He'd noted the unburned patch in the fifth fire's clearing and said it was anomalous, but not definitive of anything. I started looking into the history of the area. I called the County Historical Society, asked if there were any records of settlements, old homesteads, logging camps, anything that might have been in that part of the forest 100 years ago. They sent me copies of some old maps and land records. There was one notation from the 1890s, referencing a community burial ground somewhere in the northern section of the state forest, but no exact location given. The record said it had been used by a small logging community that had been abandoned after a series of accidents in the winter of 1897. No details on the accidents. The seventh fire happened the next Thursday, extending the pattern to the west. I went out alone this time, after the crew had cleared. I hiked to the center of the diamond, the site of the fifth fire, and stood in the clearing. It was late afternoon, the light slanting through the trees. Everything quiet except for the wind. I don't know what I expected to find. I'm not a superstitious person. I don't believe in ghosts or curses or any of that. But standing there, looking at the unburned circle in the dirt, I felt something I can't quite describe. Not fear exactly, more like recognition. The way you feel when you see something out of place and your brain tries to fit it into a context that makes sense, but can't. I left before dark and didn't go back. The eighth fire happened the following Thursday. This one was directly north of the diamond, the farthest out yet. We contained it, same as the others. I filed the report and noted that the pattern now resembled an arrow or a pointer. All the fires aligned in a rough north-south orientation, with the diamond at the base and the most recent fires extending northward. And then they stopped. No more fires that season. Nothing the following year or the year after. I kept checking the map, kept waiting for another call, but it never came. I don't have an explanation. The investigators' final report said the fires were likely natural, caused by a combination of lightning activity and dry conditions, and that the timing and placement were coincidental. I don't think he believed that, but it was the only conclusion that fit the evidence, or lack thereof. I still have the map in my office at the station, the one with all the sites marked. I've never shown it to anyone else. Sometimes I take it out and look at it, tracing the pattern with my finger, trying to see if I missed something. I haven't been back to that part of the forest since the last fire. I tell myself it's because there's no reason to go out there, that it's just trees and rocks and old ground. But that's not really true. The truth is, I don't want to find out what the pattern was pointing to. What happened to him might sound isolated, but this next account suggests that the same department can be called back to the same location for reasons that no incident report can fully capture. I've been with my department for 8 years, all volunteer. We're based in a small town, cover the town limits and a chunk of the surrounding county. Most of our calls are medical assists, car accidents on the county route that runs through town, and the occasional structure fire. We know the area, know the people, know which houses have which problems. Bad wiring, hoarding situations, elderly residents who need extra time to evacuate. There's one property we've been called to 4 times in the last 3 years. It's an old house, set back from the road about half a mile, connected by a dirt driveway that floods out every spring. The house itself is over 100 years old. 2 stories, wood frame, slate roof that's mostly intact, but sagging in places. It's been rental property for as long as anyone can remember, usually occupied by people who don't stay more than a year or 2. The first call was in January 3 years ago. Chimney fire. The tenant at the time, a woman in her 30s, living alone, called it in around 8 in the evening. She said she'd been burning wood in the fireplace and heard a roaring sound in the chimney, saw sparks coming out of the top. Standard call. We responded with 1 engine, got there in about 15 minutes. The fire was mostly contained to the chimney itself, creosote buildup that had ignited. We extinguished it, checked the attic and roof for extension, found none. The tenant was shaken but cooperative. We advised her to have the chimney inspected and cleaned before using it again. Before we left, she mentioned something that stuck with me. She said she'd been hearing footsteps on the 2nd floor for the past 2 weeks, always at night, always in the same pattern, walking from the far bedroom to the top of the stairs, then stopping. She said she'd checked multiple times, found nothing, and had started to think the house was settling or that there were animals in the walls. She laughed when she said it, like she was embarrassed to bring it up. And we didn't comment. Old houses make noise. It's normal. The second call was that summer, July. Same property, different tenant. This time it was a young couple, mid-20s, renting the place short-term. They called 911 around 3 in the morning, reported smoke in the house, thought there might be a fire in the walls. We responded with the same crew, more or less. When we arrived, there was no visible smoke from the outside, no heat signatures on our thermal camera. We went inside, checked every room, every wall cavity we could access. Nothing. No fire, no smoldering, no electrical issues we could identify. The couple was insistent. They said they'd both smelled smoke, heavy and acrid, coming from the second-floor hallway. They'd gone upstairs with a flashlight and saw what looked like a haze in the air, but when they opened the windows, it didn't dissipate. They said it just hung there, dense and still, until they went back downstairs to call us. By the time we arrived, it was gone. We spent over an hour going through that house. Checked the attic, the basement, the crawl space, the chimney again. We found nothing. No source, no explanation. We advised them to keep the windows open to call us back if they noticed anything else. They moved out 2 weeks later. The third call was the following winter, February. New tenant, older man, living alone. He called just after midnight, said there was a fire in the upstairs bedroom, that he could see the glow under the door. We responded, full crew this time, expecting a working fire. When we got there, the house was dark, no smoke, no glow. We went inside, went upstairs. The bedroom door was closed. We opened it, went in, checked everything. No fire, no heat. The room was cold, colder than the rest of the house, and there was a smell. Not smoke, exactly, but something burnt, like fabric or hair. The tenant was standing at the bottom of the stairs when we came down. He looked at us and said he knew what he'd seen. He said the glow had been there, under the door, bright enough to light up the hallway. He said he'd put his hand on the door and it had been warm, almost hot. We checked the door. It was cold to the touch. He didn't argue with us. He just nodded, thanked us for coming, and went to sit in his truck. He was gone by the end of the week. The fourth call was last fall, October. The house had been vacant for a few months. The landlord had been trying to sell it, but hadn't found a buyer. We got a call from a neighbor. Said they'd seen flames in the upstairs windows. Thought the place was on fire. We responded, expecting another false alarm, or maybe kids breaking in and causing trouble. When we got there, the house was dark, same as always. No flames, no smoke. We went inside anyway, did a full sweep. The second floor was empty, dusty, untouched. No signs of entry, no signs of disturbance. But in the far bedroom, the one that's been mentioned in 3 of the 4 calls, we found something. The floor in the center of the room was scorched, a burn mark about 2 feet across, roughly circular. The wood was blackened, charred, but not burnt through. The rest of the room was untouched. No source, no origin point we could identify. The mark hadn't been there the last time we'd been in the house. I'd walked through that room myself during the previous call, and the floor had been clear. We documented it, took photos, sent them to the fire marshal. His report said the mark was consistent with a low temperature, slow burn, possibly from something left on the floor. A candle, a cigarette, something smoldering. But the house had been vacant for months. Locked. No signs of entry. The landlord had the floor replaced and put the house back on the market. It sold about a month ago to someone from out of state. I haven't heard of any new calls yet, but I don't expect that to last. I don't know what's happening in that house. I've been in and out of it 4 times now, and every time the story is the same. Someone sees or smells something that isn't there by the time we arrive. The only constant is that second-floor bedroom and that burn mark we found the last time. I drive past the property sometimes on my way to other calls. The lights are on now, someone's living there. I hope they're doing all right. But I also hope we don't get called back, because I don't think I want to know what we'll find if there's a 5th time. Another case file suggests that emergency calls to isolated properties can take on a repetition that no dispatcher's log seems to acknowledge. I joined my department about 6 years ago, right after I moved back to the area. It's a small county department, mostly volunteer with a handful of part-time paid positions. I work part-time as a driver and respond to calls when I'm available. The coverage area is rural, a lot of hollers and ridges, properties connected by gravel roads and dirt tracks that wash out in heavy rain. We see a lot of medical calls, some brush fires, occasional structure fires in old homes that haven't been updated in decades. There's one road we get calls to more than any other. It's a gravel road that runs along the base of a ridge, maybe 6 miles long, with 8 or 9 properties spread out along it. Most of them are old, trailers, small houses, a couple of cabins. The road doesn't have a name on any official map, but locals call it Forge Road because there used to be an old ironworks up near the far end, shut down sometime in the 40s. The calls we get to Forge Road are almost always medical. Chest pain, difficulty breathing, falls, that kind of thing. The population out there skews older. People who've lived in the same house for 30 or 40 years and don't want to leave. The terrain makes response times longer. It's a 15-minute drive from our station to the start of Forge Road, then another 5 to 10 depending on which property. What I'm going to describe started about 2 years ago, though I didn't notice the pattern until it had already repeated several times. The first call I remember clearly was in March, early evening, just after 6. Dispatch sent us for a medical assist. Elderly male, difficulty breathing, 3rd property on Forge Road. We responded with 1 engine and our medical gear. 2 of us on the crew that night. When we arrived, the property was a small house. White aluminum siding, front porch sagging on one side. The man who'd called it in met us at the door. He was in his 70s, thin, pale, clearly in distress. He said he'd been having trouble breathing for the past hour, tightness in his chest, felt like something was sitting on him. We got him on oxygen, checked his vitals, and called for an ambulance. While we waited, he mentioned that this had happened before, a few months earlier. Same time of evening, same symptoms. He'd called 911 then too, but by the time the ambulance arrived, he'd felt better and refused transport. The ambulance got there, took him to the hospital. We cleared the scene and filed the report. The second call to Forge Road was in May, same kind of call. Medical assist, elderly female, difficulty breathing, 5th property on the road. Different house, different patient. But the story was similar. Evening call around 6:30. The woman was in her 80s, lived alone, said she'd been sitting in her living room when she suddenly couldn't catch her breath, felt like she was suffocating. We got her stabilized, waited for the ambulance. She also mentioned it had happened before, a few weeks earlier, same time of evening. I didn't think much of it at the time. Respiratory issues are common, especially in older populations, especially in areas where people heat with wood, and the air quality isn't great. The 3rd call was in July, same road, same kind of call. This time it was a different property, closer to the far end of Forge Road. Elderly male, chest pain and difficulty breathing, early evening, same response, same outcome. He told us the same thing. It had happened before, same time of day, and he'd felt fine afterward. By the 4th call, in September, I started keeping track. I went back through our dispatch logs and pulled every call to Forge Road from the past year. There were 11 medical calls, all to different properties, all in the evening between 6 and 7, all for respiratory distress or chest pain. All of the patients were over 60. None of them had any prior history of serious cardiac or respiratory issues. Most of them had experienced the same symptoms at least once before, always in the evening, always sudden onset, always resolving either on scene or shortly after arrival at the hospital. I brought it up with our captain. He looked at the logs and said it was probably environmental. Something in the air, maybe pollen, maybe wood smoke, maybe something off-gassing from old insulation or heating systems. He said it was worth mentioning to the county health department, but that it wasn't our jurisdiction to investigate further. I contacted the health department anyway. They sent someone out to do air quality testing on Forge Road, checked for carbon monoxide, radon, mold, particulates. Everything came back normal. The calls kept coming. Every few weeks, another one, always Forge Road, always evening, always the same symptoms. I started responding to every call on that road, just to see if I could find a pattern, something we were missing. In November, we got called to a property I'd been to twice before. The small house with the sagging porch. Same man, same symptoms. This time, while we were waiting for the ambulance, I asked him if he'd noticed anything else unusual in the area. Strange smells, sounds, anything that might correlate with the onset of his symptoms. He looked at me for a long moment, then said that the evening it happened, he always heard the same thing just before the symptoms started. A low, rhythmic sound like heavy machinery or a distant engine coming from up the ridge behind his house. He said it would last for a few minutes, then stop, and that's when the breathing trouble would start. I asked if he'd ever gone to investigate the sound. He said no. He said he'd lived on Forge Road for 40 years and knew better than to go up the ridge after dark. I didn't press him on what he meant by that. Over the next few months, I asked the same question to other patients on Forge Road. 3 of them mentioned the same sound. Low, rhythmic, coming from the ridge. Always just before the symptoms started. I hiked up the ridge one afternoon in late winter during daylight to see if there was anything up there that could explain it. Old equipment, a generator, some kind of industrial remnant from the ironworks. I found the remains of the ironworks site. Collapsed stone foundations, rusted metal, broken machinery half buried in the ground. Nothing functional, nothing that could produce sound. The place had been abandoned for 80 years. But near the center of the site, there was a depression in the ground, maybe 15 feet across, roughly circular, filled with leaves and dead branches. The edge of the depression was ringed with stones, deliberately placed, like a low wall. I cleared some of the debris and saw that the bottom of the depression was smooth, almost like it had been paved, though the surface was too degraded to tell what material it had been. I took photos, noted the location, and left. The calls to Forge Road have continued. We've had 3 more since I hiked up to the site. Same pattern, same symptoms, same time of day. I've stopped asking patients about the sound. I don't think it matters. Whatever's causing this isn't something we can address with oxygen in a stretcher. I still respond to calls on Forge Road when they come in. I do my job, get the patient stabilized, wait for the ambulance. But I don't stay any longer than I have to, and I don't look up at the ridge when I'm out there in the evening. I've learned that much. The next file comes from a firefighter who thought he understood the risks of confined space rescue until a call to an old coal town reminded him that some spaces were never meant to be entered. I've been a firefighter for 12 years, currently with a county department that covers a mix of small towns and rural areas in the southern part of the state. A lot of our coverage area is old coal country, towns that boomed in the early 1900s and then emptied out when the mines closed. There are still people living in some of these places, but most of the infrastructure is gone. What's left are the old company houses, a few churches, and the mines themselves. Most of them sealed up decades ago. We don't get called to the old mine sites very often. When we do, it's usually for something straightforward. Kids trespassing, hunters who got lost, maybe an ATV accident near one of the access roads. But 3 years ago, we got a call that didn't fit the usual pattern. It was late October, a Sunday afternoon, just before 4. Dispatch sent us for a possible person trapped in a confined space. Old mine entrance. One of the smaller sites, about 10 miles east of our station. The caller was a hiker who said he'd heard someone yelling for help from inside the mine. He'd tried to locate the source but couldn't get close enough. The entrance was partially collapsed, and the area around it was unstable. We responded with 2 engines, full crew, plus our technical rescue gear. The location was remote, accessible only by a fire road that hadn't been maintained in years. It took us almost 30 minutes to reach the site. When we arrived, the hiker met us at the trailhead and led us in on foot. The mine entrance was about a quarter mile off the fire road, up a slope through thick brush and deadfall. The entrance itself was a horizontal shaft, maybe 6 feet wide, 4 feet high, cut into the base of a hillside. The opening was partially blocked by collapsed timbers and rubble, but there was a gap at the top, large enough for a person to squeeze through. The hiker pointed to the gap and said that's where he'd heard the yelling, maybe 20 or 30 feet back into the shaft. We set up a perimeter, got our lights and air monitors out, and I went in with one other firefighter to do an initial assessment. The shaft was tight, low-ceilinged, angling slightly downward. The air was cool and damp, smelled like mud and rot. Our monitors showed normal oxygen levels, no hazardous gases, so we proceeded. About 20 feet in, the shaft opened up into a small chamber, maybe 10 by 10, with 2 additional tunnels, branching off to the left and right. The chamber was empty. No signs of recent activity, no footprints, no trash, nothing. We called out, listened, no response. We checked the left tunnel first. It extended about 15 feet before collapsing completely. The right tunnel went farther, maybe 30 feet, but also ended in a collapse. We called out again. Nothing. We went back to the entrance and told our captain what we'd found. He radioed dispatch to confirm the details of the call. Dispatch confirmed. Single caller, male hiker, reported hearing yelling from inside the mine. Called it in from his cell phone about 20 minutes before we arrived. The hiker was still there. Our captain asked him to describe exactly what he'd heard. The hiker said it was definitely a voice, male, yelling words he couldn't make out, coming from inside the mine. He said he'd heard it for several minutes before calling 911, and that it had stopped just before we arrived. We went back in, this time with the full crew, and did a more thorough search. We checked every inch of the accessible tunnels, looked for side passages, hidden shafts, any way someone could have gotten deeper into the mine. We found nothing. The collapses were old, compacted, no way anyone had moved through them recently. We cleared the scene and filed a report. No victim found, possible false alarm, area secured. 2 weeks later, we got the same call. Same location, same hiker. He'd gone back to the site, heard the yelling again, called it in. We responded, went through the same process, same result. No one inside, no signs of entry, no explanation. The hiker stopped calling after that. But over the next year, we got 3 more calls to that mine, all from different people. Hunters, hikers, a couple of local kids. All reported hearing someone yelling from inside. All described it the same way, male voice, words unclear, coming from deep inside the mine. We responded every time, never found anything. The last call was about 6 months ago. This time, dispatch noted that the caller, a man in his 50s, experienced outdoorsman, had not only heard the yelling but had seen someone at the entrance to the mine. He said he'd been hiking past the site when he saw a figure standing just inside the gap in the collapsed entrance, partially obscured by shadow, waving at him like they needed help. He'd called out, asked if they were okay, and the figure had turned and moved deeper into the shaft. He'd called 911 and waited at a distance until we arrived. We went in, same crew, same equipment. The shaft was empty. No one inside, no signs of passage, no footprints in the soft dirt near the entrance. We checked the chamber, the tunnels, everything, nothing. But this time, in the chamber, we found something we hadn't noticed before. On the wall, near the junction where the two tunnels branched off, there was a marking carved into the stone. It was old, worn, but still legible. A date, 1908, and below it, a series of tally marks. 14 of them. I asked our captain if he knew what it meant. He said he didn't, but that tally marks in old mines usually indicated either shifts worked, men on a crew, or sometimes deaths. I looked it up later. The mine had been in operation from 1902 to 1911. In January of 1908, there had been a collapse in one of the deeper shafts. 14 men were trapped. The rescue effort lasted 3 days before it was called off. The bodies were never recovered. The mine was sealed the following year. We haven't been called back to that site since. I don't know if the calls have stopped or if people just aren't reporting it anymore. But I think about it sometimes. About the voice, the figure at the entrance, the tally marks on the wall. I think about the fact that we went into that mine 6 times and never found anyone, but that every person who called it in was certain they'd heard or seen something. I don't have an explanation. I don't know if one exists, but I know I won't go back into that mine unless it's absolutely necessary. And even then, I'm not sure I could make myself do it. What happened to that crew might seem like an isolated incident, but this next account suggests that some structures hold on to the past in ways that no amount of training prepares you for. I've been with my department for 9 years. Volunteer the whole time. We're a small town department, cover the town and a few miles of surrounding county. It's a quiet area, mostly residential. A few small businesses. A lot of older homes that have been in the same families for generations. Structure fires are rare, maybe 3 or 4 a year, and most of those are minor. Kitchen fires, chimney issues, nothing that spreads. The call I'm going to describe happened 2 years ago, in late December, a week before Christmas. It was a Saturday night, just after 11. Dispatch sent us for a structure fire, old house on the north end of town near the town line. The address was familiar. It was a house that had been empty for at least 5 years, maybe longer. I'd driven past it 100 times. It was a 2-story Victorian, probably built in the 1890s. Once a nice house, but long neglected. The siding was rotted, the porch sagging, most of the windows broken or boarded up. There had been talk for years about tearing it down, but no one seemed to own it, or if they did, they didn't care. We responded with 2 engines, full crew. When we arrived, the fire was visible from the road. Flames in the upper windows, smoke pouring from the roof. It looked like it had been burning for a while before anyone noticed. The house was isolated, no neighbors close enough to see it from their windows. We set up, ran our lines, and started an exterior attack. The structure was too unstable to risk sending anyone inside for an interior attack. The roof was already compromised, the front porch collapsing, the walls leaning. Our goal was containment, keep it from spreading to the dry grass and brush around the property. We had the fire mostly under control within an hour. The roof had collapsed into the 2nd floor, and most of the interior was destroyed, but the exterior walls were still standing. We were doing an overhaul, checking for hot spots, when one of the younger guys on the crew called me over to the side of the house. He was standing near a basement window, or what was left of one, just a hole in the foundation, the frame long gone. He pointed down into the darkness and said he'd seen a light moving down there, like a flashlight or a lantern. I looked. I didn't see anything. I asked if he was sure. He said yes, he'd seen it clearly, a light moving from one side of the basement to the other, then disappearing. I radioed our captain, told him what the younger guy had reported. The captain came over, looked down into the basement, saw nothing. He asked if anyone had checked the basement for transients or squatters. No one had. The house had been locked up, or at least as locked as an abandoned house can be, and there'd been no signs of entry when we'd arrived. The captain decided we should check it anyway, just to be sure no one was down there. He sent me and the younger guy to find an entry point. There was a basement door on the back side of the house, half buried under debris and vines. We cleared it, forced it open, and went down. The basement was large, ran the full length of the house, divided into several rooms by old brick walls. The air was thick with smoke, but our lights cut through it well enough. We moved through the first room, checking corners, looking for any signs of life. Nothing. The second room was the same. Old furniture, broken shelves, junk piled everywhere, but no people. In the third room, at the far end of the basement, we found something. In the center of the floor, there was a space that had been cleared. A circle, maybe 8 feet across, swept clean of debris. In the center of the circle was a pile of burnt wood, ash, and what looked like the remains of cloth or fabric. The pile was still warm, not hot enough to be part of the main fire, but warm, like something had been burning there separately recently. The younger guy looked at me and asked if I thought someone had been down here. I didn't answer. I was looking at the walls. Around the circle, on the brick walls, there were markings, scratched into the mortar, crude but deliberate. Symbols, maybe letters, I couldn't tell. And dates. I counted 6 different dates, all in December, all on the same day, December 18th, spanning from 1897 to 1952. I took photos, told the younger guy we were leaving, and we went back upstairs. I showed the photos to our captain. He looked at them for a long time, then asked if I'd seen anyone in the basement. I said no. He asked if I'd seen the light the younger guy reported. I said no. He told me to include it in my report, but not to speculate. I filed the report, included the photos, noted the cleared circle and the markings on the walls. The fire marshal came out the following week to investigate. His report concluded that the fire had started in the second-floor front bedroom, likely due to electrical issues or transient activity, and that the basement findings were unrelated to the primary fire. He noted the dates on the walls but offered no explanation. The house was torn down the following spring. The lot is empty now, just overgrown grass and the remains of the foundation. I drive past it sometimes, but I don't look at it for long. What bothers me isn't the fire itself, or even the markings in the basement. It's the dates. 6 dates, all December 18th, spread over 55 years. I looked them up. In 1897, there was a fire in that house. Killed 3 people, a family. In 1914, another fire, same house, rebuilt after the first fire, killed 2. In 1929, another fire, 1 death. The pattern continued, fires every 15 to 20 years. Always in December, always deaths, until 1952, the last date marked on the wall. The fire we responded to was on December 18th, 2022, 70 years exactly since the last one. I don't know what it means. I don't know if it means anything, but I know that date is marked in my phone now, and I know I'll be paying attention next December. The last case file comes from a firefighter whose department covers a stretch of rural territory where barn fires are common, but where he learned that some fires follow rules that no one ever wrote down. I've been a volunteer firefighter for 16 years, active with the same department the whole time. We're rural, cover about 80 square miles of farmland, forest, and scattered residential properties. Barn fires are part of the job here. Old structures, wood construction, hay storage, sometimes animals inside. Most barn fires are straightforward. Lightning strikes, faulty wiring, careless smoking. We respond, do what we can, but by the time we get there, the barn is usually gone. Our goal is to protect exposures, keep the fire from spreading to nearby structures or fields. What I'm going to describe started about 4 years ago and has repeated 3 times since. The first fire was in early spring April, late afternoon. We got a call for a barn fire, fully involved. No one inside, no animals at risk. The property was about 12 miles from our station, a working farm. Family had been there for generations. By the time we arrived, the barn was a total loss. Fully engulfed, flames punching through the roof. We set up a defensive perimeter, protected the farmhouse and outbuildings, and let the barn burn itself out. The owner met us after we'd knocked the fire down. He was in his 60s, calm, matter of fact. He said he'd been in the house when he saw smoke, came out and found the barn fully involved. No warning, no sign of what started it. He said the barn was old, built by his grandfather in the 1930s, mostly used for storage now. Old equipment, some hay, nothing valuable. We did the investigation. No clear point of origin, no obvious cause. The fire marshal ruled it undetermined, likely accidental. The second fire was exactly 1 year later, April, late afternoon, same time of day, within an hour of the first fire's call time. Different farm, different barn, but same general area. About 8 miles from the first site. Same kind of structure, old wood frame, built in the early 20th century. Same situation, fully involved by the time we arrived. No people or animals at risk, no clear cause. I didn't think much of it at the time. Coincidences happen, especially in rural areas where the buildings are old and the infrastructure is outdated. The third fire was the following April, same pattern. Different farm, different barn, same general area, same time of day. This one was about 10 miles from the second site, forming a rough triangle with the first 2 fires. By this point, I was paying attention. I went back through our records and confirmed the timing. All 3 fires on April 14th, all between 4 and 5 in the afternoon. All barns built before 1940, all ruled undetermined cause. I brought it up with our chief. He looked at the records and said it was unusual but not impossible. He suggested weather patterns, dry conditions, high winds, maybe atmospheric electricity. He said he'd report it to the state fire marshal's office, but that unless we found evidence of arson, there wasn't much we could do. The 4th fire was this past April, same day, same time of day. This one was about 6 miles from the first fire, inside the triangle formed by the previous 3. We responded, same procedure, same result. By the time we arrived, the barn was fully involved. Total loss, no clear cause. But this time, something was different. After we'd cleared the scene, I walked the perimeter of the burn site, looking for anything we might have missed. Near the back corner of the collapsed structure, I found something half buried in the ash. A metal plate, maybe 8 inches square, heavily rusted but still intact. It had been mounted on something, maybe a beam or a wall. There was text stamped into the metal, mostly illegible, but I could make out a date, 1914. I bagged it, took it back to the station, and tried to clean it up. Under the rust, I could read more of the text. Erected April 14th, 1914. Below that, there was a name, or part of one, and a phrase I couldn't fully make out. Something about foundation and protection. I started looking into the history of barn raisings in the area. I found records of a community barn raising tradition that had been common in the region in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Barns were built by the community, usually in the spring, and dedicated with a ceremony that involved placing an inscribed plate in the structure as a kind of blessing or protection against fire and disaster. I contacted a local historical society and asked if they had any records of barns built on April 14th. They sent me a list of 6 barns, all built between 1895 and 1938, all in the same general area, all on April 14th. 4 of those barns had burned in the last 4 years. The other 2 are still standing. I don't know what to do with that information. I've reported it to the fire marshal's office, sent them the plate, the list, the dates. They said they'd look into it, but that there was no clear evidence of criminal activity. I've thought about contacting the owners of the 2 remaining barns, warning them, telling them to be careful next April. But what would I say? That their barns might burn because they were built on a specific date over 100 years ago? That doesn't make sense. None of this makes sense. But April is coming up again, and I know we'll be ready. I know I'll be checking the dispatch log on the 14th, waiting for the call. And I know that if one of those last 2 barns goes up, I won't be surprised. I'll just be confirming what I already know. That some patterns repeat. That some things are set in motion long before we're here to see them. And that sometimes the job isn't about stopping the fire. It's about witnessing it, documenting it, and trying to understand what it means. That's all we can do. The final account comes from a firefighter whose routine welfare checks taught him that some calls are less about saving lives and more about bearing witness to something that refuses to end. I've been with my department for 13 years, volunteer for the first 6, part-time paid for the last 7. We're a small county department, cover a mix of rural properties in a couple of small towns. A lot of our calls are medical assists, especially welfare checks. Older residents living alone, neighbors or family members who haven't heard from them in a few days, that kind of thing. There's one property we've been called to for welfare checks more than any other place in our coverage area. It's an old farmhouse set back from the county route about a quarter mile, surrounded by empty fields that haven't been worked in decades. The house itself is from the early 1900s. 2 stories, wood frame, in surprisingly good condition considering its age. It's been owned by the same family for over 100 years, passed down through generations. The current owner is a woman in her late 70s, lives alone, no close family in the area. She's lived in that house her entire life. Born there, never married, never left. She's polite, keeps to herself, pays her bills on time. The only reason we know her at all is because of the welfare checks. The first one I responded to was about 7 years ago, late November, early evening. A neighbor called it in, said they hadn't seen the woman in several days, noticed her mail piling up, lights on inside, but no movement. Standard call. We responded with one engine, knocked on the door, announced ourselves. No answer. We checked the windows, looked for signs of distress, saw nothing obvious. We forced the front door and went inside. The house was neat, clean, everything in its place. We called out, checked the first floor. Kitchen, living room, dining room, all empty. We went upstairs, checked the bedrooms. In the main bedroom, we found her. She was sitting in a chair by the window, facing the glass, completely still. We called her name, no response. I walked over, touched her shoulder gently. She turned her head slowly and looked at me like she'd just woken up. She said she was fine, that she'd been watching the field. I asked what she was watching for. She said the lights. We checked her vitals, everything normal. She was oriented, knew where she was, what day it was. She apologized for the trouble, said she sometimes loses track of time. We helped her downstairs, made sure she had food, water, everything she needed. Before we left, I asked her about the lights she'd been watching for. She looked at me for a moment, then said they come every November, out in the far field, always at dusk. She said her father used to watch for them too, and his father before him. She said they've been coming for as long as anyone can. Remember, I didn't press her. We cleared the scene, filed the report, noted that she was safe and stable. The second welfare check was the following November, almost exactly 1 year later. Same neighbor called it in, same situation. We responded, found her in the same chair, same position, staring out at the field. This time when we called her name, she didn't respond at all for almost a minute. When she finally turned to look at us, her eyes were unfocused, distant. It took her several moments to recognize where she was. We got her downstairs, checked her vitals again, everything normal. I asked if she'd been watching for the lights. She nodded and said they'd come the night before, 3 of them, moving across the field from east to west, about 4 feet off the ground. She said they moved slowly, deliberately, like they were looking for something. I asked if she'd ever gone out to see what they were. She looked at me like I'd suggested something dangerous, maybe even offensive. She said no one goes out into the field when the lights are there. She said that was the rule, had always been the rule. The third welfare check was the following November. Same pattern, same situation. But this time, when we found her in the chair, she was holding something, a notebook, old leather-bound, pages yellowed and brittle. She was writing in it, her hand moving across the page in careful, measured strokes. When we got her attention, she looked down at the notebook, like she was surprised to find it in her hands. She closed it quickly and set it on the table beside her chair. I glanced at it as we helped her downstairs. The page she'd been writing on was dated that day, November 17th, and below the date was a single line. 3 lights, same as last year, same path, same speed. I asked her about the notebook later while we were in the kitchen. She said it had been her father's, that he'd kept records of the lights every November for 40 years. Before him, her grandfather had kept similar records, though those had been lost in a fire. She said the notebook was important, that someone needed to keep track. I asked what would happen if no one kept track. She didn't answer. We've been called back for welfare checks every November since then. Always the same week, always the same situation. Last year, when we found her in the chair, she wasn't alone. There was someone else in the room. I saw him out of the corner of my eye when we first came in. A figure standing in the far corner of the bedroom, near the closet, facing the wall. I turned to look directly at him, and he was gone. Just empty space, shadows, the corner of the room. I asked the woman if anyone else was in the house. She said no, just her. But she said it in a way that made me think she knew what I'd seen, or thought I'd seen. We got her downstairs, did our check, everything normal. Before we left, I went back upstairs alone, told the crew I wanted to do a final sweep. I went into the bedroom, looked around, checked the closet. Nothing. But on the table beside the chair, the notebook was open. I looked at the page. It was dated that day, November 16th, and below the date were 2 lines. 4 lights this year, one came closer. Below that, in different handwriting, older, shakier, was another line. If they reach the house, close the book. I closed the notebook, left it on the table, and went downstairs. I didn't mention what I'd seen or what I'd read. We got the call again this past November, same week, same time, but this time, when we arrived, the house was dark. No lights on inside, no movement. We forced the door and went in. The first floor was empty. We went upstairs. She was in the chair, same position, facing the window. The notebook was in her lap, open, but this time she didn't respond when we called her name. She didn't move at all. The paramedics said she'd been gone for at least 12 hours, probably longer. Natural causes, they said. Heart failure, common at her age. I looked out the window while they worked, looked out at the field. It was dusk, the light fading fast. And out in the far field, maybe 200 yards from the house, I saw them. 4 lights, pale and steady, hovering about 4 feet off the ground. They weren't moving. They were just there, arranged in a line, facing the house. I watched them for maybe 30 seconds. Then one of the paramedics called my name, asked me a question about the scene, and I turned away. When I looked back, the lights were gone. We cleared the scene, filed the report. The woman's estate went to a distant cousin, someone from out of state who'd never even visited the property. I heard the house sold a few months ago, bought by someone from the city looking for a quiet place to retire. I hope they're doing all right out there. I hope they don't look out at the field in November. And I hope they never find the notebook, because I think some records are better left incomplete. I drive past the property sometimes on my way to other calls. The house looks the same from the road. Lights on, smoke from the chimney, normal. But I don't look at it too long, especially in November, especially near dusk. Because I know what I saw, and I know what the notebook said, and I know that some things are kept track of for a reason. And I know that when the record keeping stops, whatever was being watched doesn't stop with it. It just continues, unobserved, until someone else decides to look. That's all we have for tonight. 8 files from firefighters across the Appalachian region. 8 calls that ended with questions instead of answers. If any of this sounds familiar, if you've seen lights in fields, or heard sounds from old mines, or found marks on walls that shouldn't be there, we want to hear about it. Leave your experiences in the comments below. Make sure you're subscribed to Blacktop Files so you don't miss our next collection. Turn on notifications and let us know where you're listening from tonight. Until next time, stay safe out there, and remember, not every fire burns the same way, and not every call ends when you clear the scene.